Hi angels, today I want to talk to you about why you crave more peace and solitude when you're on a journey of self-discovery, when you're on a journey of, opening up to your spirituality. I want to reassure you there is nothing wrong with you. You are just going on a different path to really discover your true authentic self. Things that used to be important to you, you start to find that they're not so important, and your values start to change because you're getting into alignment. This is a good thing, my friends. It's definitely a good thing, but it can be a bit of a struggle and it can bring up a lot of change for you. And I just want to dive into that today and help you understand that this is a really, really powerful place to be. The nothingness, the peace, the tranquility, it's just beautiful. And this is what I want to talk to you about today. You might find that along the way of, let's say, going through a spiritual journey, along the way of self-discovery, of finding out more about who you are, what you want, what you enjoy, what your needs are, you find that you start to crave more peace, you start to crave more solitude. And this is a really, really normal thing on a spiritual path. This kind of follows on a little bit from last week's episode, which was all around keeping your spiritual journey private, keeping these things to yourself, because you don't need external validation, you don't need everybody's input. And you find that when you go on this bit of a spiritual journey, you actually feel that you want a little bit more alone time, or you find noise, like too much noise in the world and distractions, they frustrate you a little bit, and you start to think, what's going on? What's wrong with me? You might already be aware of it, or you might not. And I felt like I needed to talk to you about this today. I was driving home from the studio. I've been in there early, taught a bar class this morning, and I'm driving home, and I just found, because I'm out kind of through the cane fields, and I wound down the windows. I had like this beautiful raising, my vibrations playlist on. And as I'm driving out through the cane fields and the sun is kind of just streaming through my, driver's side window that I just wound down, I just took a few deep breaths and went, oh my God, I feel so good. This just feels so good. And I started to think back over the years and think about how the more self-aware I've become, the more I've craved the peace, the more I've craved the stillness, the more I've craved the solitude. So I want to kind of have a bit of a chat with you about that today, and I guess let you know, look, there's nothing wrong with you. There is definitely nothing wrong with you. It's like you suddenly start to get connected with your soul or your higher self, your spiritual part of yourself, that you're all of a sudden, you find, it could be all of a sudden, or it could be like this gradual journey, that you find that your craving of more peace and more solitude comes from this fundamental shift in your values. You want this inner tranquility, and you find that this is more valuable to you than other people's opinions, than material stuff, than external validation, than like the constant stimulation, the constant noise, because you start to notice, right? And this is what it all comes back to, is awareness. You start to become aware of, there's a lot of noise going on in the world. There's chatter from people all the time. There's noise on the radio. There's noise in daily life. There's noise at work. There's noise in the shopping center. There's noise on social media. There's drama. There's distractions. And you just kind of feel like, oh my goodness, this is actually a little bit too much. And sometimes you don't notice it until you step away from the noise. When you step away from the noise, for an example, if you go on retreat, I know when the girls come with me on retreat over to Bali, we have silence in the morning. And when we really take that time just to honor ourselves and connect in with ourselves, that I found for me, my very first retreat, before I had the studio, I was still a personal trainer, and the very first retreat that I went to the villa that I take you guys to, I kind of was just starting a spiritual journey, right? Like, I'd done a lot of yoga, done a lot of personal training, a lot of group fitness, just kind of living that normal life, having drinks on the weekend, doing all the things. And I started to become a little bit more curious about who I am and what I want. And I felt, I guess, a curiosity. I just felt this kind of getting drawn to this retreat that my friend was going on into Bali. So I decided to go, and it wasn't until I spent that week in a really beautiful, peaceful way, away from my family, away from work, away from the busyness of just the rat race, that I just felt a real inner calm, a real inner tranquility that I'd never experienced before. And I went, I like it. This feels good. It feels maybe a little bit weird at first getting used to, because you're used to getting up and talking, used to putting the radio on, you're used to kind of having noise around you, that suddenly I was immersed in a week of very peaceful activities, tranquility, quiet mornings, starting my morning with practice, that I went home and I was like, this sounds really bad, like, kids, would you just shut up? Like, I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to hear all of everything just, it's like all the noise got amplified, right? And I thought, I want to go back to Bali. Like, I want to go back. And because my soul felt at home, it's like I returned home to myself, and it just felt so good. Like, the silence felt nourishing and it felt amazing, that stepping away from something like the daily rat race, having that peace and quiet, then going back into the daily rat race, all of a sudden I was like, I actually don't like this as much. And so that could be like a start of a journey for you, where you just start to notice. It might be when you come into yoga class, right? You come in, I know everybody says to me when they come into a class, they say, it just feels so calm in here. Like, it just feels so beautiful and calm. I just want to stay here. I don't want to go home, or I don't want to go back to work. And so that might be the first little, I guess, awareness that you start to have. You might find that when you go on a holiday and you find that little bit of peace away from the rat race, away from the busyness of the world, and then you come back, that all of a sudden you feel like overstimulated. You feel like everything going on around you is just so busy. You crave more of a slowing down. You might find that you get out in nature, like you might go for a walk in the rainforest, or go for a walk along the beach, or go for a nice peaceful swim, that all of a sudden you just become a little bit more mindful. You start to notice a few more things, and you're like, this feels good. I don't know what it is, but I like it and it feels good. So, like, I guess that spiritual awakening can just be a little gradual unveiling, a little bit at a time, where you start to notice that peace feels good. I remember years ago, I went on one of, like, I've spoken to you guys about it before, like a workshop. It was like about raising your vibration. I had no idea what vibration was at that time. I think I was in like my late 20s. I had no idea about like energy, law of attraction, none of that. And I remember going to this workshop, and it was really, really peaceful, beautiful. And she just sparked a little something in me. I just had this curiosity. She was probably speaking about all these things that I honestly didn't even know what a vibration was. And I remember on that drive home, I'm driving home, and all of a sudden I start to notice, as I like maybe pull up to some lights or slow down, I'd start to notice the leaves a little bit more in the trees, or I started to notice a butterfly kind of flying past. And then I will never forget, I was sitting out on my back patio. I was having breakfast, and I noticed a butterfly fly past my, just like past the patio. And then I noticed another one, and then another one, and another one. And I'm like, what the hell? There were like 33 butterflies fly past. And it's like all of a sudden, I had just started to open myself up to a world that I wasn't aware of before, because I was just in the busyness. You're just doing, you're going, you're just, dealing with stuff, you're taking action, you're kind of in survival mode. That I realized after I went to that little workshop, that I was walking through the world blindfolded. I was walking through the world not noticing things. That it's all of a sudden I felt like I had an awakening. I felt like I had, like, it's almost like a light switch went on inside me, and it's almost like I started to notice things that I had never noticed before. Just a little bit more beauty in the world, or I started to dabble in a little bit of meditation and just try it. And it was from that start that the craving become a little bit more deeper, to have a bit of time by myself. And you might be feeling that too, where you're kind of feeling that you notice around you, where you notice the noise, you notice the busyness, You notice that, you go to a shopping center and there's just people everywhere. And you just notice there is just so much distraction in the world. There is just so much overwhelm in the world, that there's so much stimulation, that you might have a feeling of just get me out of here, or you might have a feeling that you just want to go home to a little bit more like your own sanctuary, right? And I think of like my physical home, like when you kind of want to go home for peace. I think about that in my body and my own returning home to my soul home and returning home to myself. And I'm a generator in my human design. I don't know if you guys have studied human design. I won't go into that now, but it's very, very powerful. And part of my role in the world as a generator is to generate light in the world. Like I generate light in people. I kind of bring this energy to people. But then part of my human design is that I also then want to go back to my cave. So it's like when I go, I teach or I'm out with people all the time, I want to come back here to where I am right now, where it is peaceful and it is calm, and I want to go back to my physical home, like my physical space around me that is like my little sanctuary, as your homes are as well. But I realized it went deeper than that. It was like I needed to return home to myself, and I was craving the peace to fall more in love with learning about myself and what my soul needs, and what my needs are, what my likes are. And so I guess a lot of this comes from this need that the tranquility, the peace, the solitude, it's more valuable to you because you start to discover more about yourself. You start to realize that as you find a little bit more space for yourself, a little bit more peace, you start to realize this false identity that you have been, or this mask that you had been wearing, whether it's in your job title or your roles or how you show up for other people. You start to realize that you've been walking through the world with this identity, and you start to discover in the peace, in the moments of quiet, that you're finding more of your authentic self, because you start to release this false identity that you have clung to, that's kept you safe, that's kept you fitting in with people. And you start to realize in the silence, you reflect a little bit more, you feel a little bit more home in yourself, you start to find your values, what you value, and you start to cherish that. That becomes more important to you than what everybody else around you is doing. You start to feel this shift to more being as opposed to doing, and it feels good, right? It's like this little stir up in your body where you go, this actually feels good. And that's kind of your emotional guidance system, or your feelings help keep you on track. So when you have things that feel good, that's like a little nudge from the universe to keep going. Like, if that makes you feel good, if that leaves you feeling good, it raises your vibration, but it also is showing you this is something that your soul needs. So I want to encourage you today to honor that. If you're finding that you want to be a little bit more still, because we're human beings, right? We're not human doings. We're meant to be human beings. And so when you're going through the world with more stillness, you start to be in the essence of who you are. You start to become more aware of who you are at a soul level, instead of what the world around you has formed you to be, right? And I think that's what happens. We have these layers of conditioning, these layers of beliefs put on us, that from childhood, or from who we associate with in our day-to-day life, that we start to become more of who we think we need to be, or we start to become more of what we feel we should be to fit in with other people, or how we need to show up in our work to get a promotion, or to be seen, or to be liked, or to fit in with other people. We start to add more layers of ego, as opposed to being our real self. It's a little bit noisy. There's just a boat going past at the moment, which is fine, and he just put me off. That's all right. But what you find is, when you start to become more peaceful, when you start to have those moments of more silence, of more quiet in your mind, you start to discover a bit more about, what do I actually want, as opposed to what other people, you feel like you need to do around other people. You start to let go of this ego that we've been carrying around the world, or these layers, or these masks, or this identity. You start to, little by little, release this. It's like you shift and you let go of parts of you that you know you don't need to control anymore, that you know you don't need to be liked, that you know you don't need to fit in, you know you don't need to show up and be someone else that you're not. And it's hard to do that amongst the noise, my friends. Like, it's hard to do that when you're constantly stimulated, you're constantly going, you're constantly around people, you're constantly having somewhere that you have to be, something that you have to do, you're on to the next thing, you're constantly thinking about the next thing. That when you find a little bit more peace and you find a little bit more silence, you start to feel that you find you want a little bit more need for connection, for self-connection, a little bit more need for grounding. And you start to realize that happiness is an inside job, right? Happiness comes back to, we're responsible for our own happiness. Only us can make ourselves happy. Yes, we have all these amazing things around us, you know, family, friends, loved ones, experiences, which are incredible. But at the end of the day, you realize that happiness is an inside job. And I remember I started to realize that I started to notice being around people and how I shouldn't say the way that they made me feel, but how I started to feel around people. I started to notice where I couldn't maybe be my real self around some people, that I started to think, why am I hanging around these people? Or I would start to feel that I was in conversations and I would notice maybe the bitchiness, or I'd notice the judgment, or I'd notice, you know, women bitching about their husbands. And I would think, I don't want to get involved in this. Like, I don't want to be a part of this. That I felt it was easier, it was more peaceful, it was more calmer to kind of be with my own thoughts and be with my own reflection. I'd find myself driving home thinking about those situations and thinking, I actually don't know if I want to be around that kind of energy. And so it made me retract a little bit more from the world. So you start to let go and you start to trust in this higher power. You start to trust in your soul and what your soul is showing you along the way, as opposed to this kind of need for control, this need for perfectionism, this need for showing up and being a certain way. You start to realize that there's a depth that already exists within you, and that you have answers within you. You don't need to seek opinions, and you don't need to seek validation from everybody else. And this is what I found, like when I would sit in those moments of meditation, or sit in those moments of quiet contemplation, or getting out in nature, grounding, I suddenly started to feel like, what do I need to do? What do I want? What do I want? Like, what are the answers that I need for me? And it's hard to realize all of that when you're in the constant noise. So you will find along this spiritual journey, you will suddenly start to, it's almost like you pull back from people a little bit. And that's okay. There is nothing wrong with you. You might feel like friendships start to change. You might feel like people fall away from your life. You might feel like your circle starts to maybe get a little bit smaller. That is okay. It's a process that sometimes the spiritual journey can feel a little bit lonely, but it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It means that you just need to step away from the noise, step away from the distractions, to actually go within and find yourself a little bit more, and find out who you are, what you love, what lights you up, what fulfills you, what your purpose is, instead of getting involved, or instead of getting sucked into all of the noise and the drama and the external validation around you. It's a good thing, girls. It's a really, really good thing. And a couple little things that I've found have helped along the way, you know, like when you start your day with peace, when you start your day with calm, and it could be the drive. Like, I know for me, sometimes it could be here and I sit in a little meditation, or I just stand out in nature and I literally do nothing. I just put my feet on the grass and I just take like a few big butterfly breaths, and I just feel into the gratitude as I start my day. It feels so good. And then what I started to find was that little bit of peace in the morning, instead of just getting up and go, go, go. I noticed my day started to flow a lot better. I noticed I was less reactive, and I noticed that I, I guess I just found that I've discovered a little bit more ease and flow in my life when I started my day in that peaceful, calm way. And it starts to build trust in yourself. When you start your day in that little bit of peace and calm, maybe you have a little bit of meditation, maybe you just sit with a mindful cuppa, you start to become so aware of who you are and what you want that you build this trust in the guidance that comes through you. Because when you feel you're in more peaceful state, it could be through meditation, it could be through journaling, it could be sitting out in nature, it could be in yoga, it could just be in the car by yourself, you find that guidance comes through, or creativity flows through, or wisdom comes through, that you start to go, hang on, this is my soul speaking to me, and my soul is telling me what I need to hear, as opposed to people around me. And then you start to notice when you follow your soul's guidance, it steers you in the right path. It steers you away from obstacles. It steers you towards opportunities or towards people. But it's a process of stripping things back, stripping people back, stripping noise back, to get back into connection with yourself, to understand and to discover your intuition and your own internal guidance. And that comes from peace. It's too hard. Look, you're still going to be surrounded by noise. We're still living in this world, right? So we're still dealing with distractions. We're still dealing with work. We're still going to these places, and that's okay. That's part of having the human experience. We're earthy angels. Remember, we're part human and part soul. And so we're going to have those busy times. We're going to have those periods where we're in demand from our kids. We're in demand from our partner. We have places we have to be. We have, you can't just live in this little peaceful bubble all the time. I fully get that. But then how can you bring yourself back to have that little bit of peace in your day every single day? It could be through a yoga class, or through your journaling, or it could just even be through music. I know, like, even driving home this morning, I don't know about you, but I find I cannot stand the radio anymore. And I would prefer to just sit in peace of some of my nice yoga music, or my Raising My Vibrations playlist, or absolutely nothing. Sometimes I turn the radio off and I just sit in silence, and it just feels calm. I cannot stand the noise of the radio and people talking. I still like to dance. I still like to, R&B music and things like that. Absolutely. But I cannot stand the noise on the radio. So it could be those little moments where you're by yourself, where you're driving, where you just pop on a nice playlist and you just breathe, or you just kind of sit and just move to the music, or you just kind of feel into how you're feeling. It could be getting out in nature, just finding bits of time throughout the day when you just step out in nature and just looking around and going, what do I see? What do I feel? What do I hear? And just noticing the silence. Sometimes just shutting up and not talking to anyone, and just noticing the silence, and just see how good it feels when you actually do that. It could be, like sometimes going on a retreat, or a day retreat, or a couple of hours out to yourself to go to a whatever feels peaceful for you girls, whether it's a little bit of a day retreat, or a yoga class, or a week-long retreat. Giving yourself an opportunity to step away and feel how nice it feels to have this little bit of peace and have this little bit of quiet. And then you will crave it. You will notice how good it makes you feel, that you start to find that you want to bring a little bit of it into your day. And that is a really great thing. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not a loser being by yourself. Don't feel, because sometimes the spiritual journey can feel lonely, right? Where you want to retreat away from the world a little bit and you want to have your own space. There is nothing wrong with you. This is your soul telling you that you just need to value what is important to you, and you just need to take care of yourself, and you need to fill your cup up, and you need to return home to yourself. And everyone around you is going to benefit. You will start to find your right communities that align with you, the right workplaces that align with you, because you suddenly realize, like, your values in the quiet. You realize your values, that you know who you are, what you want, what you will tolerate. Your confidence starts to build in yourself, that you will align with community. So if you get a little hunch, whether it's to go to a yoga class, or a women's circle, or a breath work, facilitation, or a study that you want to do, or just a group you want to join on social media, and you kind of feel drawn to them, listen to that, because it's kind of drawing you to those communities that are good for you and that are in alignment for you. If you feel a need to pull away from certain people, certain communities, certain pages, certain influences, do that, honor that, and do that, because the more that you step away, the more you give yourself space to process and reflect, but also a healing journey. Sometimes we find that we need to heal past wounds. We need some space to overcome some trauma that we have had going on in the past or in our life, that you need to step away and find a little bit of peace, a little bit of solitude, to actually process your own healing and to actually take care of you and fill your cup up. So if you're feeling this need for peace and solitude, my message is honor it. My message is take it. My message is find a way that helps you feel calm, that helps you feel grounded. It could be those simple things like turning the radio off, or maybe just asking people, like around you, setting that boundary and sharing with people around you, saying like, I just need, I want to start going to bed a little bit earlier. I don't want to watch TV. I want to start going to bed a little bit earlier, and writing in my journal or putting a meditation on. You don't have to do what you've always done because what people around you expect, whether it's your partner or your kids. It's okay to tell people and set boundaries and just set an expectation like, this is what I'm craving, this is what I'm feeling drawn to. I really appreciate it if you would help me out here and just give me a little bit of time and space. But I want to honor that for you too, and give that time and space to your partner or to your kids, and encourage your kids. I pulled this card this morning. Independence. Encourage your kids' independence. I thought, what card do I need for my community this morning? And I thought, I'm going to shuffle 7 times, and I'll pull the one eye on top. As I'm shuffling, this card like spills out across the floor, and it is this little bird, and with beautiful rays of light all around it. And it says independence, and it says that you stand at a threshold of great significance. On either side of it, you will find you're more independent than previously. You'll be making moves, speaking your truth, and choosing your own way on your own. It says that not everyone gets to define your values or decide your future. Even though you may consider opinions and ideas when deciding what direction to take, you have the final say. You've drawn this card. Listen to this, because it might be you. It has been me. Because you've been falling into codependent patterns with another person or groups, and it means that you could use some healthier boundaries that will benefit you, and to reevaluate where that person or group ends and where you begin. I was reading the other day where it said like, you're the wheel of life, you're in it, but you're not of it. So you're in this world, you're having this human experience, but you've got to open yourself up to that spirituality as well, and not be so stuck in the wheel of life and stuck in the rat race. And it's okay to kind of pull yourself out a little bit to discover more about yourself. I mean, I've been with my husband since we were 16, and we've done so much together. The more that I stepped away from my relationship, to have that time of solitude, to go to my yoga class, to go out to lunch by myself, to go and sit and read a book by myself at the beach or at the park, the more I started to find out who I was outside of the relationship in my own soul journey. We come together in marriage, we come together in our roles of parents or lover or our job roles, but you're on your own soul journey. And when you find that little bit of peace, you start to discover who you are outside of your roles and who you are outside of your relationship, that independence from your relationship. And it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you don't love them. It doesn't mean you don't care for them. It doesn't mean that you don't want to do things together anymore. Yes, do that. We're having this life experience. You're in your life, you're in the world, but you're not of it. You're on your own soul journey. So the more you can have the confidence to go out and have lunch by yourself, or do some things by yourself away from your partner, and encourage them to do the same, show your kids that you go and do things on your own, show them independence, the more confident you will become, and the more aligned you'll become with your authentic self, because you're giving yourself peace and solitude and quiet and reflection time to discover who you are. You teach that to your kids. You teach that. You give permission to people around you, my friends. And I'll continue on with this card. It says, if you've been thinking that you needed to behave a certain way to elicit a desired response from someone else, that is not a loving thought, but a controlling one. If you think you need to hide or change who you are to maintain a particular relationship, remember that when you show up as your true self, that relationship may change, it may end, but a painful development will be preferable to obscuring the truth of who you are. In all cases, this card advises you to stand in your power and be your own counsel. It asks you to look deeply at your thoughts, your impulses, to see which ones feel authentic to you, which ones you may have picked up from family and friends or culture, or unconsciously assumed as your own. It's time to let go of standards, customs, patterns, expectations, assumptions that don't feel right to you anymore, that never felt right to you in the first place. You are discovering that you are more powerful than you previously realized. And you are. But you need the time, the peace, the solitude, like the card said, away from people sometimes, away from distractions, away from society, to just find yourself, girl. So it's not a bad thing if you're craving the spiritual, sorry, if you're on the path to a spiritual journey, you're craving the peace, the solitude, honor that. Give it to yourself, listen to that, because the thought will come up, the craving will come up, the feeling will come up, but then you might feel this internal conflict. I can't do that, I'm not allowed to do that, it's the way it's always been. I feel like I'm abandoning my husband or my kids, or what are they going to do without me? Or you feel guilty, or you feel like it's just unknown, right? Because you haven't done it before. That's okay. Just take one first step. What is one thing that you can do today to find a little bit more peace? The mind will get busy. That's okay. Just bring it back to the peaceful moment, noticing your surroundings. And peacefulness doesn't have to be in meditation, girls. It doesn't have to be sitting in silence. It can just be, like I said, driving with a nice playlist on that makes you feel peace and calm, going for a walk on the beach. Just find opportunities, find moments of more peace and more time alone, girls. You are gonna thank me for it if you find it's a bit of a struggle at the moment. That is okay. You are gonna crave it the more that you do. I really wish that for you, and I just wanted to reassure you today that there is nothing wrong with you, that this is a normal part of the spiritual journey, because you just can't tolerate bullshit anymore. You just can't tolerate the noise. You just can't tolerate the you just want authenticity. You just want people that have values that align with yours. You want substance. You want fulfillment. You want fulfilling relationships. It's like you just don't want the small talk anymore, and you'd rather go by yourself than have the small talk, or just, being in situations that you don't want to be in. That's okay. Listen to your heart and soul. Your soul will tell you what you need. Your soul will guide you in the right direction. So if it's pulling you in the direction of something peaceful, follow it, listen to it, honor it, because your higher self knows you best. Over your partner, over your kids, over everybody around you, your soul knows you best. It's time you get into more of a united relationship with your soul, because things will flow so much better for you, my friends. Have a beautiful, beautiful day, and I will see you in the next episode. So much love to you. Bye.